Good morning. I'm Stephanie Shine of Tennessee Shakespeare Company. Welcome back to the Decameron Project. Today's date, April 20th, 2020. Today's theme, perseverance. On this date, in 1937, Tennessee Williams was put on academic probation at Washington University in St. Louis due to poor grades. One of the pieces of work that he did while he was there was a play called Me, Vasha, which was entered into a literary contest and received an honorable mention. Fortunately, Tennessee Williams will persevere, and he will transfer to the University of Iowa and receive a degree in English, and he will go on to win 2 Pulitzer and be awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. If you have time right now, go take a look at his beautiful glass menagerie. Just open it up and glance at the opening and closing soliloquies of his biographical character, Tom. Oh, they're stunning, and that is where we learn that time is the longest distance between 2 places. In his foreword to A Sweet Bird of Youth, which is a later play of his, this sweet human being wrote the following: I think that hate is a feeling, a thing that can only exist where there is no understanding. Also on this date in 1933, another native Mississippian, William Faulkner, published his second and final book of poetry called A Green Bough. Let's listen to one of his poems. This is called A Poplar. Poplars are very important in this part of the South. They are everywhere, and one of our longest thoroughfares is even called Poplar Avenue. A Poplar by William Faulkner. Why do you shiver there between the white river and the road? You are not cold, with the sunlight dreaming about you, and yet you lift your pliant, supplicating arms as though to draw clouds from the sky to hide your slenderness. You are a young girl, trembling in the throes of ecstatic modesty, a white, objective girl whose clothing has been forcibly taken away from her. I mentioned that was his final book of poetry. Here's what Faulkner had to say about himself. I am a failed poet. Maybe every novelist wants to write poetry first, finds he can't, and then tries the short story, which is the most demanding form after poetry. And failing at that, only then does he take up novel writing. Also on this date, Irish novelist Bram Stoker died in 1912 at the age of 64. During his lifetime, Bram was known primarily for being the manager of the Lyceum Theater, which was owned by Sir Henry Irving. During the execution of his duties, he was known to write up to 50 letters a day, and yet he persevered with his own interests, even though his job kept him very, very busy. He spent years researching vampires and related folklore, and then published in 1897 Dracula. He also wrote many other novels and short stories and poems. But listen to this ominous description of Dracula's castle from chapter 2 of that famous, famous novel. The castle is on the very edge of a terrible precipice. A stone falling from the window would fall 1,000 feet without touching anything. As far as the eye can see is a sea of green treetops with occasionally a deep rift where there is a chasm. Here and there are silver threads where the rivers wind in deep gorges through the forests. But I am not in heart to describe beauty, for when I had seen the view, I explored further. Doors, doors, doors everywhere, and all locked and bolted. In no place, save from the windows in the castle walls, is there an available exit. The castle is a veritable prison, and I am a prisoner. We know how well that's going to work out. And in a castle of another sort, on this date, April 20th, in 1611, Macbeth received its first performance at the Globe Theater. Here, an audience for a first time meets a very tipsy Lady Macbeth as she describes what might be happening in the antechamber in the room next door outside of Duncan's chamber. That which hath made them drunk hath made me bold. What hath quenched them hath given me fire. Hark. Peace. It was the owl that shrieked, the fatal bellman which gives the sternst good night. He is about it. The doors are open, and the surfeited grooms do mock their charge with snores. I have drugged their possets, that death and nature do contend about them, whether they live or die. Hark! Oh, peace. I'm afraid they have awaked, and 'tis not done. I laid the daggers ready, he could not have missed him. The attempt and not the deed confounds us. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I'd have done it. In closing, we'll go back to that failed Mississippian poet, William Faulkner. During his speech for winning the Nobel Prize in Literature of 1949, William Faulkner was asked to reflect upon the state of the human race as it faced the incredible danger of the impending Cold War. Would the human race survive? And William Faulkner talked about his faith in humanity with these words: humankind has a soul, a spirit capable of compassion and sacrifice and endurance. The poet's, the writer's duty is to write about these things. The poet's voice need not merely be the record of man. It can be one of the props, the pillars to help him endure and prevail. Thank you for joining me. Take care of those you love. Reach out, call them. And I look forward to the next time. This is Stephanie Shine with Tennessee Shakespeare Company on April 20th. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.